the noises inside the walls. The first thing Ethan noticed about the house was not its age or the peeling paint around the window frames, or the way the roof seemed to sag beneath the weight of old Canadian snow. It was the silence. Not peace, not quiet. Silence. The kind that waits. His father called the place a blessing. His mother called it a fresh beginning. His little sister, Lily, only 4 years old, called it the castle house because of the narrow windows and the steep roof that pointed into the winter sky like the black fingers of a church. But Ethan did not call it anything. He only stood on the icy pavement that December morning, watching his breath turn white in front of him, and felt as if the house had already seen him before. It sat at the end of a pale suburban street outside Montreal, where every lawn was buried under snow and every chimney breathed smoke into the gray afternoon. The houses nearby were warm-looking, with Christmas lights wrapped around porches and curtains glowing softly from within. But this house remained dim, even with every light switched on. The real estate agent had laughed when Ethan's mother asked why it was so cheap. "Old structure," she said. "Needs love. Nothing more." His father believed her because fathers often believe whatever lets them protect the dream a little longer. They had outgrown their apartment years ago. Lily needed a room of her own. Ethan needed space. His mother needed a kitchen that did not feel like a hallway. And his father, who had spent most of his life working with his hands, wanted a house he could repair until it finally felt like theirs. So they bought it. The basement became Ethan's room. At first he liked that. It made him feel older, more separate, almost independent. His father cleaned the concrete floor, painted the walls a soft gray, replaced the weak yellow bulb with a warmer light, and helped Ethan carry down his bed, desk books, and old gaming chair. There was a built-in bookshelf against one wall, heavy and old-fashioned, its dark wood polished by time. Beside it stood the narrow staircase leading up to the kitchen. Under those stairs was a small locked storage door that his father said probably held nothing but pipes. "Don't worry," his father said, tapping the wall with his knuckles. "This place is solid." But at night, solid things began to move. The first weeks were almost happy. Snow fell endlessly. His mother made soup in the evenings. Lily ran through the rooms in wool socks, laughing whenever the floorboards creaked beneath her. His father worked late into the night, repairing cabinets, sealing windows, and cursing gently at ancient plumbing. Ethan told himself he was lucky. Then one night, he woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of something tapping inside the wall. Not loud, not dramatic, just 3 soft taps. Tap, tap, tap. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. For a moment, he thought it had been part of a dream. The basement was dark, except for the faint blue glow of his charging laptop. Pipes clicked somewhere above him. Wind pressed against the small ground-level window. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it came from the wall beside his bed. Ethan held his breath. "Dad," he whispered, though he knew his father was upstairs asleep. The tapping stopped. He waited for 5 minutes, then 10. Nothing happened. Eventually feeling foolish, he pulled the blanket higher and closed his eyes. In the morning, he mentioned it over breakfast. "Pipes," his father said immediately. His mother looked at him with soft concern. "Old houses make noises, sweetheart." Lily, sitting with cereal on her chin, whispered, "Maybe it's a mouse." Everyone laughed. Ethan laughed too. But he did not sleep well the next night. Over the following days, the noises became part of the house's language. A faint scrape behind the bookshelf. A dull thud beneath the stairs. A whispering sound in the walls when the furnace turned off. Each time, Ethan tried to explain it away. Old wood. Air pressure. Pipes. Mice. The strange thing was that the sounds seemed to come only when he was alone. If his father came downstairs, nothing happened. If his mother entered with laundry, the basement became perfectly still. Even Lily could sit on Ethan's bed for an hour, watching cartoons, and the walls would remain silent. But when Ethan stayed up late, headphones around his neck, the house began to breathe. One Friday night after his parents had gone to bed, Ethan was playing a game on his computer. Snow tapped lightly against the small window above his desk. The room smelled faintly of paint and damp wood. At 6 a.m., he heard laughter. A child's laugh. It came from the wall behind the bookshelf. Ethan froze, one hand still on the mouse. The laugh was soft, almost playful, but horribly close, as if someone had pressed their mouth to the other side of the wall and tried not to be heard. "Lily," he called. No answer. He stood slowly and walked to the stairs. The kitchen above was dark. He climbed halfway up and listened. The house slept. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. When he checked Lily's room, she was asleep under a pink blanket, one hand curled beside her face. His parents were asleep too. Ethan returned to the basement feeling colder than before. For the first time, he looked carefully at the bookshelf. It was built directly into the wall, or at least it seemed to be. The wood was old, darker than the rest of the room, with carved edges that did not match the plain basement renovation. His father had joked that it was the only elegant thing in the whole house. Ethan ran his fingers along the shelves. Dust gathered in the corners. Nothing moved. Nothing opened. Still, as he turned away, he felt it. That unmistakable sensation, being watched. Not imagined. Not dramatic. Not the nervous feeling one gets after a scary film. This was heavier, focused. Like attention had weight. Ethan spun around. The room was empty. The weeks passed, but the feeling remained. Small things began to change. A pen he left on his desk appeared on the floor. His gaming chair faced the wall when he knew he had pushed it under the desk. A paperback novel vanished from the shelf, and returned 2 days later, placed upside down on his pillow. When he told his father, the reaction was no longer laughter but irritation. "Ethan, you're 19, his father said. "You're too old to scare yourself like this." "I'm not trying to scare myself." "Then stop staying up until 3 in the morning watching horror nonsense." His mother said nothing, but Ethan saw worry in her eyes. Not fear of the house. Fear for him. That hurt more than disbelief. So he stopped telling them. Instead, he began recording the sounds on his phone. Most nights he captured nothing. Just static furnace, hum distant traffic, and his own breathing. But once, at 2, 3, 1 a.m., the microphone caught something that made his stomach tighten. A whisper. Too faint to understand. Then, 2 soft knocks. Then what sounded like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. Ethan listened to it nearly 20 times. By the 20th, he deleted the file. He did not know why. Perhaps because proof made it worse. By late January, the house had settled into winter, like a body sinking beneath ice. The windows froze at the corners. The streetlights glowed through snowstorms like dying candles. Inside, his family tried to build warmth through routine dinner at 7 television, after his mother folding laundry while Lily slept against her shoulder. Ethan watched them, and felt a loneliness he could not explain. He loved them. He was inside the same house. Yet somehow he felt separated from them by more than stairs. The basement had become another country, a lower, colder place where the rules were different. Then came the night of the power outage. It happened during a storm that swallowed the entire neighborhood. Wind screamed against the siding. Snow hammered the windows. At 11:58 p.m., every light in the house flickered once, twice, then died. His mother called from upstairs. "Everyone stay where you are," Lily began crying. His father cursed and searched for flashlights. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed in complete darkness. Without electricity, the basement changed. The familiar shapes disappeared. The desk, the chair, the shelves, the stairs all became black masses in a blacker room. Then he heard it. A slow creak. Wood shifting. Not from above. From the bookshelf. Ethan did not move. Another creak followed. Then a soft dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the floor. His heart began to pound so loudly he could hear it in his ears. "Dad," he called. The storm answered. Upstairs, his family moved around with flashlights, their voices muffled and distant. No one was coming down. Ethan reached blindly for his phone. The battery was at 12%. He turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. At first, everything looked normal. His bed, his desk, his chair, the stairs. Then the light reached the bookshelf. Ethan stopped breathing. The shelf was no longer flush with the wall. It had shifted outward, only a few centimeters, but enough. Behind it was a narrow black gap, a gap that had not been there before. Ethan stood slowly, every muscle in his body begging him not to move closer. But fear has a strange gravity. Sometimes it pulls you toward the thing you should run from. He stepped forward. The floor groaned beneath him. The gap behind the bookshelf seemed impossibly dark, darker than the room, darker than the storm outside. A smell drifted from it. Damp cloth, dust, old metal, and something sour beneath it all. Something human. Ethan raised the phone higher. The beam trembled. Inside the gap beyond the edge of the shelf, he saw nothing at first. Only blackness. Then from somewhere inside that blackness came a sound. A breath. Slow. Wet. Waiting. Ethan stumbled backward, nearly dropping the phone. And from behind the bookshelf, very softly, someone whispered his name. The hidden room. Ethan. The whisper did not echo. That was what made it worse. It came from behind the bookshelf with the closeness of a mouth beside his ear. Soft and damp, as if the darkness itself had learned how to speak. Ethan did not scream at first. His body refused to give him even that. He stood in the dead basement light with his phone trembling in his hand. The small white beam shaking over the narrow gap where the shelf had moved away from the wall. Upstairs, his father's footsteps crossed the kitchen. His mother was murmuring to Lily, trying to calm her. The storm screamed against the house, burying every ordinary sound beneath wind and snow. Then the whisper came again. Ethan. This time, he stumbled backwards so hard that his heel struck the bed frame. Pain shot up his leg, and the spell broke. Dad. His voice tore out of him, raw and childish. The footsteps above stopped. Ethan, his father called. There's someone down here. The house seemed to inhale. A moment later, the basement door flew open. His father descended with a flashlight in one hand and a hammer in the other, his face pale but set into that hard expression fathers wear when they are terrified and determined not to show it. His mother stood at the top of the stairs with Lily in her arms, both of them wrapped in darkness. What happened? His father asked. Ethan pointed at the bookshelf. It moved. His father shone the flashlight at it. For several seconds, none of them spoke. The gap was real. Not large, not dramatic. Just a thin vertical wound in the wall, black and impossible. His father approached slowly. Ethan saw the shift in him, then the fading of irritation, the death of disbelief. He pressed his shoulder to the bookshelf and pushed. At first, nothing happened. Then the wood groaned. The entire bookshelf swung inward. A cold smell rolled out into the room. His mother gasped from the stairs. Behind the shelf was not a wall. It was a passage. Narrow, low, and unfinished, with exposed wooden beams and pipes running like old bones through the darkness. The passage led only a few feet before opening into a small hidden room beneath the stairs and behind the basement wall. His father stood at the entrance, breathing heavily. "Stay there," he said. But Ethan did not stay. He followed 2 steps behind as his father moved the flashlight across the hidden space. The room was barely large enough for a man to lie down in. Its ceiling was low and slanted. Insulation hung from the beams in yellowed strips. Dust covered everything, but not evenly. Some patches had been disturbed recently. On the floor lay a dirty blanket folded with care. Beside it were food wrappers, an empty plastic bottle, a rusted tin cup, and the cracked body of an old radio. Ethan felt his stomach turn. Someone had been there. Not years ago. Not decades ago. Recently. His father crouched and touched one of the wrappers with the edge of the hammer. It was clean enough to be new. "Oh my God," his mother whispered from the stairs. His father stood abruptly. "Upstairs. Now." But now Ethan. There are moments when the world becomes too large to understand. Ethan climbed the stairs behind his mother, his legs moving without belonging to him. Lily had stopped crying. She stared over his mother's shoulder toward the basement door, her small eyes wide and glassy. When they reached the kitchen, his father locked the basement door and pushed a chair under the handle. Though they all knew now that locks meant very little in that house. The police arrived 40 minutes later, slowed by the storm. 2 officers came in, with heavy boots and tired faces carrying flashlights brighter than anything the family owned. They asked questions. They separated the answers into neat official lines, as if terror could be made harmless by writing it down. When did you first notice noises? Had anything been stolen? Did anyone have access to the house before purchase? Had Ethan been drinking? His father answered most of it. His mother sat with Lily on the sofa, rocking her gently, though the child had fallen asleep. Ethan remained silent until one officer asked what he had heard behind the shelf. "A voice," Ethan said. The officer looked up. "What did it say?" Ethan swallowed. "My name." The officer's expression changed, but only for a moment. They searched the basement. They searched the hidden room. They found no one, but they found enough. Behind the blanket, tucked inside a gap between 2 beams, was a plastic folder wrapped in a black garbage bag. One officer carried it upstairs and opened it on the kitchen table, while Ethan's mother covered Lily's eyes without knowing why. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. At first, Ethan could not understand what he was seeing. The images were dark and grainy, taken through cracks, gaps, and narrow holes. Then his mind arranged the shapes, and the horror rose inside him like freezing water. His room, his bed, his desk, himself. There was a photograph of Ethan sleeping on his side, one arm hanging over the edge of the mattress. Another showed him sitting at his computer in the blue glow of the screen. Another showed his mother folding laundry at the foot of the stairs. Another showed Lily sitting on the basement rug laughing with a stuffed rabbit in her lap. His mother made a small, broken sound. His father turned away and pressed both hands against the counter. The officer kept going, his jaw tightening with every photo. Then he stopped. "What is it?" Ethan asked. The officer did not answer immediately. He picked up one photograph and looked at the back. There was a date written in black marker. Ethan leaned closer. October 17. His blood seemed to stop moving. They had moved into the house in December. "That's not possible," his mother whispered. But there were more. September 4, August 29, July 11. Photos of Ethan leaving their old apartment. Photos of his father loading boxes into a rented van. Photos of Lily asleep in the back seat of their car outside a supermarket. Photos of his mother standing beneath the yellow lights of a parking lot, unaware that someone had been watching her through glass and rain. The silence in the kitchen became unbearable. "This person knew us before we bought the house," Ethan said. No one corrected him. By dawn, the storm had weakened, but the sky remained dark and bruised. The police told them to stay elsewhere for a few nights. His father refused at first out of pride or shock, but his mother looked at him with such quiet devastation that he nodded. They packed quickly. Ethan went downstairs once with an officer to gather clothes. The hidden room had been sealed with temporary tape, but the bookshelf still stood open like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. As Ethan crossed the basement, he noticed something near his desk. His gaming chair had been turned toward the bookshelf. On the seat lay his old paperback novel, the one that had vanished and returned upside down on his pillow weeks before. This time there was a page folded carefully in half. Ethan opened it. A sentence had been underlined in pencil. "You can live beside someone for years and never know the shape of their hunger." He did not tell the officer. He did not know why. Perhaps because some fears are too intimate to share. Perhaps because deep down he already understood that the police were looking for a stranger. And whoever had done this no longer felt like a stranger. They stayed in a cheap hotel near the highway. His father barely spoke. His mother cried only in the bathroom, turning on the tap so Lily would not hear. Lily asked when they were going back to the castle house, and no one answered. Ethan did not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the photographs. Not the ones of him sleeping. The older ones. The impossible ones. The ones taken before the house. On the second night, his father said the police had found no fingerprints clear enough to identify. No footprints outside because the storm had buried everything. No forced entry. No sign that anyone had left the hidden room recently. But someone was there, Ethan said. His father looked older than he had 2 days before. I know. Those 2 words should have comforted him. They did not, because belief had come too late. 3 days later, they returned to the house with new locks, new cameras, and a kind of silence that no family should have to carry. The hidden room was boarded shut. The bookshelf was screwed into place. His father installed motion sensors in the basement and bright lights in every corner. For a while, nothing happened. That was almost worse. The house became polite, obedient. Still, Ethan moved his bed to the opposite wall, though it made no difference. He slept with the lights on. He kept a chair beneath the basement door. He watched camera footage before going to school after dinner and at midnight. His mother tried to pretend life could be rebuilt with enough routine. His father tried to repair what had been broken by installing more hardware. Lily stopped calling it the castle house. Then, on the 9th night after their return, Ethan woke at 3:11 a.m. to a notification on his phone. Basement camera motion detected. For a long moment, he simply stared at the screen, unable to move. Then he opened the footage. The video showed his basement in pale night vision gray. His bed was empty because he had fallen asleep upstairs on the sofa. The desk stood still. The bookshelf remained fixed to the wall. At first, nothing moved. Then the darkness near the bottom of the stairs shifted. A thin hand appeared from between 2 floorboards. Ethan stopped breathing. Slowly, impossibly, a man pulled himself up from beneath the house. He was tall but folded as if his body had learned to live in spaces too small for it. His hair hung in long greasy strands around a face that seemed carved from hunger. He wore layers of filthy clothing, and in one hand he carried something flat and pale. The man stood in the middle of Ethan's room. Then he turned his head toward the camera. He knew exactly where it was. He lifted the object in his hand. It was a photograph. Ethan zoomed in with shaking fingers. The picture showed a little boy standing in front of an apartment building many years ago, holding a blue backpack and smiling shyly at the camera. Ethan recognized the boy. It was himself. He had been 7 years old. On the video, the man stared into the camera for nearly a full minute. Then his mouth opened. There was no sound on the footage, but Ethan could read the shape of the words. I found you first. He was there before us. I found you first. Ethan watched the silent words form on the man's mouth again and again, until they no longer seemed like words at all, but a curse shaped by lips that had forgotten warmth. He did not remember standing up. He did not remember calling for his father. One moment he was alone on the sofa, the phone glowing in his shaking hands. The next, the house was awake around him. His mother was crying quietly in the hallway. Lily was clutching a blanket to her chest, and his father was watching the footage with a face that had gone completely bloodless. The man in the video stood in Ethan's basement like he belonged there. That was the worst part. He did not look lost. He did not look afraid. He looked like a patient owner returning to a room that had always been his. His father called the police again. This time his voice did not tremble with confusion. It trembled with rage. He came from under the floor, he said, into the phone. Not through a door. Not through a window. Under the floor. The officers arrived before dawn, bringing more men brighter lights and a hardness in their eyes that told Ethan they finally understood. This was no ordinary trespass. They pulled back the carpet. They lifted loose boards. They searched beneath the basement staircase and behind the sealed bookshelf. And then they found the second opening. It was hidden beneath the lower step of the staircase. A narrow hatch disguised so perfectly beneath dust and old wood that even Ethan's father had missed it during the renovation. Beneath it was a crawlspace black and freezing, barely large enough for a grown man to move through on his stomach. One officer shone a flashlight inside. The beam vanished into a tunnel of earth concrete and ancient timber. Jesus, the officer whispered. The house had roots. Not pipes, not storage. Roots. The crawlspace ran beneath the basement floor, then split toward the walls. Small tunnels twisted between the foundation and the rooms above. Holes had been drilled through baseboards behind vents, inside closets. Watching points. Listening points. The house was not haunted. It had been occupied. Ethan stood beside his mother as the police carried out box after box from beneath the floor. More blankets, cans of food, broken tools, old batteries, children's toys that did not belong to Lily, a cracked camera, a bundle of photographs tied with string, and notebooks. Dozens of them. The officers would not let Ethan read them, but he saw enough through the open covers. Dates, names, descriptions, times people woke up, times people slept, what they ate, what they argued about, which child cried at night, which mother sang in the kitchen. This had not begun with them. That afternoon, a detective named Moreau sat with the family at the kitchen table. Snow drifted past the windows behind him, soft and indifferent. We are looking into the property history, he said, but there were signs this person may have been using the internal spaces for a very long time. How long? Ethan asked. Moreau looked at him. We don't know yet, but Ethan already knew the answer would not be comforting. Over the next few days, the truth arrived in fragments, each piece more terrible than the last. The house had been built in the late 1970s by a man named Anton Varga, a carpenter from Eastern Europe who had moved to Canada with his wife and young son. The wife died within 3 years. The neighbors remembered the boy only vaguely. Pale, quiet, never in school for long, never invited anywhere. His name was Lucian. Then, in 1989, Anton Varga died in the house. The son vanished. There were no records of him after that. No school transfer. No death certificate. No address. Nothing. The house was sold. Families moved in and out. Some stayed months. Some stayed years. A few reported noises. One family left after their daughter claimed a man spoke to her through the wall. Another moved after their infants' toys began appearing under the stairs. People dismissed it. Old house. Bad wiring. Stress. Children's imagination. Ethan listened to all of it with a quiet sickness spreading through him. Lucian had not vanished. He had remained. The son of the first owner had grown inside the walls like mold, feeding on scraps, silence, and the private lives of strangers. He had inherited the house in the only way he understood, not by law, but by hiding so deeply inside it that no one could remove him. But one question remained. Why Ethan? Why had the photographs followed him before they moved in? The answer came from the oldest notebook. Detective Moreau did not want to show it to the family, but Ethan's father insisted, and perhaps the detective understood that some horrors become worse when left unnamed. The page was dated 7 years earlier. The handwriting was thin and slanted. I saw the boy today. Blue backpack. Quiet eyes. He listens before he speaks. He would understand the house. Below it was a location. The apartment building where Ethan had lived when he was 7. Ethan stared at the page until the words blurred. Lucian had seen him long before the house was ever listed for sale. In some twisted chamber of his mind, he had chosen Ethan, waited for him, watched the family from a distance. And when the house became available, perhaps through chance or something darker, Ethan had walked directly into the story Lucian had been writing for years. His mother covered her mouth. His father stood up and left the room. That night, the family agreed they would leave permanently. They packed only what they needed: clothes, documents, Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit, his mother's jewelry box. His father's tools remained in the garage. Ethan's books remained on the shelf. No one cared anymore about ownership. The house could keep the rest. But storms have a cruelty of timing. By evening, snow returned with violent force. The road disappeared beneath white sheets. The police advised them to wait until morning. Officers were stationed outside, but even their presence felt thin against the darkness pressing against the windows. Ethan did not sleep. None of them did. They stayed together in the living room, lights blazing Lily between their parents beneath a blanket. The basement door was locked, blocked, and watched by a camera. At 2, 4, 7 a.m., the lights went out. For one impossible second, no one moved. Then Lily screamed. Not from the sofa, from somewhere below. Ethan turned toward the blanket. Empty. His mother's hands clawed through the fabric as if Lily might be hidden inside it. "Lily," she cried. A sound came from beneath the floor. A dragging sound. Ethan's father lunged toward the basement door, but something struck from the other side with such force that the chair jumped away from the handle. The door opened. Cold air breathed up from below. "Stay behind me," his father said, but Ethan was already moving. They descended with flashlights, the beams wild and shaking. The basement looked wrong in the darkness, stretched into unfamiliar shapes. The bookshelf remained fixed. The floor hatch was open. From inside the crawl space came Lily's voice. Small, terrified. Ethan. He dropped to his knees. "Lily, I'm here." "Don't come," she sobbed. "The man says you have to stay." His mother made a sound Ethan would remember for the rest of his life. Then another voice emerged from below. Lucian's. Dry, gentle, almost tender. He was mine first. Ethan's father tried to climb into the crawl space, but the opening was too narrow. The police outside were pounding at the front door, delayed by frozen locks, and the storm, every second stretched into agony. Ethan looked at the opening. He was smaller than his father. He understood then, with absolute clarity, what Lucian wanted. Not Lily. Him. Ethan took the flashlight and lowered himself into the dark. The crawlspace closed around him like a throat. He dragged himself forward on elbows and knees, splinters biting his skin. The air smelled of soil rust and old breath. Ahead, Lily whimpered. Then the tunnel opened into a hollow beneath the stairs. Lucian sat there with Lily in his arms. He was thinner than the camera had shown, almost skeletal, his eyes enormous in the flashlight beam. Lily was crying silently now, her face pressed against his filthy coat. "Let her go," Ethan whispered. Lucian looked at him with something like wonder. "You came." "Yes." "I knew you would." "Let her go." Lucian stroked Lily's hair with trembling fingers. "They always leave. They always take the children away. But you listened. You heard me. I was afraid of you." Lucian's face collapsed slightly like a child hearing an unbearable truth. "I kept the house alive. You heard us. I watched over you. You stalked us." Lucian flinched. For a moment, Ethan saw not a monster, but a boy who had been buried alive inside his own childhood, and had grown into something no one had come to save. But pity did not soften the fear. "Take me," Ethan said. "Let Lily crawl past me." Lucian's eyes brightened. Behind Ethan, his father shouted his name. Lily crawled first, shaking violently. Ethan pushed her toward the tunnel behind him. His father's hands reached in and pulled her out. For 1 second, Ethan felt relief. Then Lucian grabbed his wrist. His grip was cold and shockingly strong. "You stay," he whispered. Ethan swung the flashlight. It struck Lucian across the face. The man screamed, not loudly, but with a wounded animal sound. Ethan tore free and scrambled backward as officers forced their way into the basement above. Hands reached down. Voices shouted. Lucian tried to retreat into another gap in the foundation, but the police were faster now. Light filled the crawl space. Men dragged him out from beneath the house, kicking, weeping, and whispering Ethan's name, as if it were the only word he had left. By morning it was over. At least, that was what everyone said. Lucian Varga was taken away in an ambulance, first, then into custody. Lily was unharmed, though she refused to speak for 2 days. Ethan's father sold the house at a loss to a developer who promised to tear it down. His mother never looked back when they drove away. They moved into a small apartment facing a busy street. For months, Ethan slept with curtains open, comforted by traffic, headlights, human noise. Slowly, life arranged itself into something almost normal. Lily laughed again. His mother cooked again. His father began repairing things again, though never after dark. Then in late spring, Ethan received an envelope. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed Ethan asleep in his new apartment, one arm hanging over the edge of the bed. The angle was high, as if taken from inside the ceiling. On the back, written in thin, slanted handwriting, were 5 words. "Homes change. People don't."